Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto was the son of a goddess. Kurama had a jutsu to save him. The only problem? It didn't quite work as intended. And now Naruto is reborn in a world where gods and monsters roam the lands. Thankfully, this time around, he has a mother with the most striking silver eyes, the same color as the moon. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 13, A Peaceful Aftermath. Hestia stared up at Kurama with an unreadable expression. For once, Naruto couldn't get any read on her, her emotions and thoughts were totally hidden to him. Her eyes traced over Kurama's form, from his 9 tails swishing around lazily behind him to the black fur around his red eyes stretching up to his ears. Kurama stared right back at her with his customary glare on his face. Naruto, Hestia said dangerously. I'm completely fine with you being a reincarnated ninja from another dimension that lied to me for 3 years. Naruto winced when she put it that way. However, she continued, this is going too far. What is it, goddess? Kurama asked mockingly. Afraid that I'm going to eat small children? Worried that I'm the hatred incarnate? Even though his words were sarcastic, there was something in his tone that told Naruto that this was probably something that had occurred before. Feared and believed to be evil just because of his monstrous appearance. No, it's not that, Hestia murmured, shaking her head. It's just. She fell silent for a moment before she whirled around to face Naruto, flames flickering wildly in her narrowed brown eyes. You've had something this cute living in your head all this time, and you never introduced him to me. Naruto blinked. One of Kurama's tails crashed down, crushing several trees underneath. Hey! Naruto snapped even as the crushed trees dematerialized into light within his mind. Apology letter to the log, now. Quiet, brat, Kurama growled before turning his attention to Hestia. You. He leaned in closer challengingly to Hestia. What did you just say? Hestia smiled. I said that you're cute. Kurama trailed off, at a rare loss for words. I mean, she's not wrong, you know, Naruto piped up with a grin that told Kurama just how much he was enjoying this. Once you get past your prickly personality, you're really nothing but a cute furball. Hestia nodded vehemently in agreement. Something snapped. It may have been Kurama's sanity. Kurama, was it? Hestia took a step forward. Kurama took a step back, eyeing her warily. Naruto noticed. Immediately, he knew what to do. Oi, Naruto began with a smirk. Don't tell me that you're scared of her. Kurama scoffed. Scared of her? Don't make me laugh. A giant teddy bear, Hestia muttered under her breath, a fervent light in her eyes as she stalked towards Kurama. You're like a giant teddy bear just asking to be hugged into oblivion. Fear filled Kurama's eyes as he cautiously backed up until he reached the edge of the clearing, his tails just a few inches away from the trees. For a moment, he seemed to contemplate whether or not it was worth crushing the trees to escape, but one look at Naruto's suddenly scathing glare shot down that idea. And then Hestia was right in front of him, peering up at him without any fear. Then she sighed despondently. Whatever. Hugs aren't fun if the other person, or Kitsune, doesn't want them. Kurama's sigh of relief sent a breeze throughout the clearing, rustling the grass and leaves. Hestia reappeared next to Naruto's side and smiled at Kurama warmly. I'm Hestia, the goddess of the hearth and family. It's a pleasure to meet you, Kurama. The pleasure is all mine. Naruto could see the visible effort it took Kurama to say those words, although to be fair, Kurama likely didn't have much practice in being polite. I take it that you were instrumental in Atlas's defeat? Hestia asked. At that, Kurama smirked. Of course. That battle was all me. Now that's a lie, Naruto immediately replied. Oh? Remind me again, who was it that landed the finishing blow on Atlas? You did that with my body, so technically, it was a joint effort. Naruto countered. Therefore, I demand half the credit. You wish. He turned his attention back to Hestia. Why do you ask? Thank you, Hestia said, bowing her head. Kurama paused in confusion. What? Thank you, Hestia repeated, her tone completely sincere. Even after all these millennia, Atlas's power and brutality remains fresh in my mind. By defeating him, you saved the lives of everyone on that mountain. She beamed at him. Thank you for saving my family. Kurama scrutinized her for one long moment, blinking once when he sensed no deceit or falsehood. Incredibly enough, it appeared that she was being completely sincere. He chuckled in amusement, shaking his head slightly in disbelief and amazement. You're welcome, Hestia. In all his centuries of being alive, Kurama had only encountered a handful of people who were genuinely kind. Hagoromo, Ajura, Naruto. And now, he can add the first goddess to the list. Hestia. Still though, what were the odds of Naruto being related to someone as kind as he was? Practically zero, but then again, Naruto always did have a habit of defying the odds. After being teleported back to Olympus, Naruto quickly went to find his quest mates. He located them at a quiet corner of the garden. Percy, Zoe, Thalia, Bianca, and Annabeth were sitting on the soft grass, a pile of food around them. Percy spotted him first. Naruto. He shot up to his feet, concern in his eyes. Where were you? I went to go talk with Hestia, Naruto answered. Thank the gods, Percy breathed a sigh of relief. I was getting a little worried there. Naruto tilted his head. What for? He was afraid that Zeus had done something to you, Annabeth explained. Got all freaked out too. Naruto stared pointedly at the assorted food on the ground. You were definitely in a hurry, I see, he said dryly, taking a seat. Percy shrugged, sitting back down as well. I mean, gotta have dramatic timing and all that. Naruto chuckled. Of course, he suddenly whipped his head to stare at Percy incredulously. Hold up, you were worried about me. Dude, did you hear what you said to Zeus after your dad won the drinking contest? Balls of steel, by the way, Thalia said admiringly. I can't believe you actually said that right to my father's face. Beyond stupid is more like it, Zoe said, wiping her mouth with a napkin. There was a very good chance that Zeus would have blasted you for the insult. It was a supremely foolish decision. Percy raised an eyebrow. Come on, guys. Seriously? Give me some credit here. At everyone's blank stares, he sighed. Look. With my dad right there, there was no way Zeus could risk blasting me. Not only would my dad have stopped him, but even if the blast did manage to go through, the consequences would be too dire for Zeus. He couldn't risk angering my dad like that, especially with the threat of the Titans. Moreover, you all saw how much Zeus was drinking. I doubt he would remember anything from this party, so any later punishment is unlikely. You don't know that, Bianca frowned. Alcohol might affect gods differently. He could barely walk a straight line, Percy snorted. And on top of that, judging by how he was winking at two nymphs during the drinking contest, well, let's just say that the combined efforts of a boatload of alcohol, some happy time, and Hera's subsequent punishment of said happy time would wipe the memory of my insult from his mind. Hera knows already. Thalia asked confusedly. I thought my dad would be smarter than that. Naruto noticed how she didn't even deny her father cheating on his wife. Percy paused. Well, she will know once I send her an anonymous message via sacrificial flame. I like him, Kurama immediately said. Unless. Naruto, please tell me that he's not a ball of angst that's obsessed with revenge. He's not. Kurama grinned. Perfect. Now this is a friendship that I can actually approve of. Hey, what's wrong with Sasuke? Naruto asked, offended. It would be faster to list what's not wrong with him. I saw the perfect opportunity and I took it, Percy continued. After all. He grinned deviously, how many people can say that they've insulted Zeus to his face and lived with no consequences? There was a moment of silence as they absorbed his words. Zoe broke the silence first. I did not expect that, she laughed. Dear gods, Thalia chuckled. I see that you've taken Chiron's lessons to heart. Dude, Naruto grinned. Well played. Annabeth shook her head in amusement. Now if only you could apply that level of thinking to your studies. Percy groaned. Don't remind me. I still have to get back to school once winter break is over. There were simultaneous sympathetic winces around the group. Wait, Zoe, Bianca suddenly spoke up worriedly. Do the Hunters of Artemis have to go to school? Definitely not, Zoe answered. Although we do have our own lessons and curriculums taught in a non-traditional classroom setting. Thalia snapped her fingers, her entire face brightening up. I just remembered. That means that I don't have to go to school anymore. Then she smirked at Percy. How does it feel, to have to go back to the most mind-numbing, boring, and torturous place on Earth? Percy's eyes glazed over in a 1,000-yard stare. Oh gods. He thought of something. At least Annabeth and Naruto have to suffer, that is, go to school too. But the thing is, I like school, seaweed brain, Annabeth smiled at him, amusement shining in her gaze. Percy sagged a little at her words. He turned to Naruto, desperate to have a fellow comrade in the hellish situation that could share his pain. Naruto simply laughed, crushing all of Percy's hopes. Nope, he grinned. I've never gone to school before, and I'm not planning to start. That's not fair. Percy exclaimed in outrage. Feels bad, man, Thalia replied. Besides, you deserve school, Annabeth told him without a hint of sympathy. What? Why? Because you didn't even know the fundamental properties of domains. Why do I need to care about that? Because it's basic demigod knowledge. Percy shrugged. I've never needed that information before to defeat monsters. You also didn't know anything about how the mist functioned. Nor did you know about essence combination, Zoe listed out. There is a startling amount of information that you are entirely ignorant of. What? Annabeth stared at Percy disbelievingly. Have you even been researching the Greek myths in your spare time? No. Percy said it as if it was obvious. Do I seem like the type to do that? Dude, what have you even been doing at camp for the last few years? Thalia asked. Have you even taken a single academic course yet? Percy looked away sheepishly. Not exactly. There was a thud as Annabeth and Thalia face-palmed simultaneously. Zoe just observed them with mild interest. Let me get something straight, Annabeth said in a tight voice. After 2 years, you haven't taken a single academic course at camp yet. Yup. Percy replied nonchalantly, popping the pea. The only non-practical course I've taken was Chiron's common sense class. I thought it was strange that I never saw Percy in my classes, Thalia muttered. But seriously? You haven't taken history of the gods, analysis of monsters, secrets of the mist, applied science. She trailed off as Percy shook his head. That explains so much. I just care about the important stuff. Percy took a sip from his goblet of what appeared to be blue Coke. I don't see a point in spending hours learning and memorizing information that I'm never going to use. I'd much rather invest the time in training and honing my fighting skills. He's a lot like you. Kurama commented. Naruto agreed. He saw many parallels between Percy and himself when he was younger. When you were younger. Kurama laughed. Don't give me that. You're just as stupid now as you were 6 years ago, back when you were a fresh genin. Excuse me dash. Didn't you forget that only Senjutsu worked on Juobito? Kurama said amusedly. In the middle of a fight? Mere minutes after it was revealed that only Senjutsu would affect him? That's what I thought. To be fair, that was 3 years ago, back when I was just 17. And during those 3 years, I somehow highly doubt that you became a prodigious genius. Naruto grumbled in his mind, but in the end, he didn't really have anything to say. After all, even though he would never willingly admit it to Kurama, it was the truth. Naruto wasn't arrogant enough to think that he was perfect. In terms of academics, he was severely lacking. He still remembered the disaster that was the written portion of the Chunin exams. He had gotten only one question correct, the question being what is your name? However, he was well aware of his own flaws, and he always planned around them to make everything work out. Percy just had to learn to do the same. And if you do have to use the information one day? Annabeth asked, narrowing her eyes slightly. If there's an enemy that can't be defeated without a vital piece of information? Then what will you do? Percy shrugged. Then I'll just ask you. He smiled at her. Between the two of us, I'd say we can take on any enemy, wouldn't you say? Why yeah. Annabeth stammered, slightly taken aback by the unwavering conviction in his tone. She looked down at her food, clearly not sure how to deal with the sheer amount of faith he had in her. Percy, for his part, just stared at her blankly. Then he shrugged and took another sip of blue Coke, dismissing it from his mind. There was no point in trying to understand girls, after all. Split personality, Bianca spoke up. Naruto, you mentioned a split personality during the meeting. Are you okay? Mentally. I still feel like you could have come up with a better excuse than that. Hey, shut it. I didn't hear you volunteering anything when we discussed the plan. Naruto grinned. Yup. His name's Kurama, by the way. We're friends. Living alone with Apollo for 3 years. Zoe muttered. Honestly, I'm surprised that your mental state isn't any worse. Just gaining a split personality is probably one of the best case scenarios. I barely even know Apollo, and I feel a little bad for him. Is his reputation even worse than mine? Depends on how you define worse. Well, demigods have a tendency to have dyslexia and ADHD, Annabeth said. So I guess having a split personality isn't too bad. They considered that for a moment. Thalia shrugged. Let's go with that. Kurama, if you can hear us, it's nice to meet you. I couldn't care less, human. Naruto smiled. He says it's great to meet you guys, and that he wishes to be friends with all of you. I did not. The Apollo cabin would probably want to take a look at you, Percy remarked. Get prepared for a lengthy medical and psychological exam. Naruto shivered. Yeah, hard pass on that. Speaking of camp. Thalia turned to Naruto. Have you decided what you are going to do yet? Naruto frowned. What do you mean? Are you going to stay at Camp Half-Blood? Or will you join the hunt? Naruto opened his mouth to speak but then shut it as he realized that he himself didn't know the answer. Fortunately, Zoe answered for him. He's going with us, obviously. She said casually. The hunt does not leave any of their members behind. Especially not the son of Artemis. Hey wait, Percy frowned. What do you mean by that? He's a half-blood, right? That means he has to stay at Camp Half-Blood, since the ancient laws forbid Artemis from interacting with him too much. I know that Zeus favors Artemis and all, but even he can't give her that much leeway. Naruto noted with mild interest that even though Percy just learned of the ancient laws a few hours ago, he seemed to already have a solid grasp of the concepts. Zoe nodded. Typically, you would be correct. However, Artemis already went to convince Lord Zeus to make an exception. Annabeth sat up straight, intrigued. How? I do not know, she admitted. However, when I spoke to Artemis on the matter, she seemed confident. Perhaps she'll call in a favor? Or even ask for a favor. Annabeth mused. Artemis always was Zeus's favorite daughter. If Zeus ever did grant an exception, then it would be for her. Wasn't your mother Zeus's favorite daughter? Bianca inquired. She shook her head. No. At one point Athena was, but after the failed rebellion, their relationship recovered eventually, but it never quite returned to what it once was. Even if Zeus did like Artemis enough, does he like Naruto enough? Thalia contemplated. True. Annabeth said slowly. Thalia turned to Naruto with a grin. Oh yeah, by the way, Naruto, you have my eternal respect for calling my dad Super Thunder Gramps. Naruto grinned. Thank you. It's not something to be proud of, Zoe sighed. We really need to talk about your tendency to antagonize the gods. Hold up. Naruto held up his hands in protest. I didn't call him Super Thunder Gramps to antagonize him or anything. It was a genuine nickname. Zoe stared at him incredulously. Are you serious? Well, yeah. Naruto shrugged. I give nicknames to everyone. And you're a blasphemous heathen for that. Excuse me? You called my father Hagoromo, the sage of six paths himself. Super Sage Gramps, Kurama growled. You're not fine with that? Of course I'm not fine with that. The only reason I'm able to somewhat tolerate it is because I've already been desensitized to your particular brand of insanity, and what a sad reality that is. Whatever you say, giant cuddly teddy bear. I'll fucking kill you. Naruto gave a mental chuckle. Love you too. I don't remember you calling Apollo by any nicknames though, Percy commented. A dark, haunted look passed over Naruto's face. I did once, he whispered. I called him Super Sunny Pervert. In his mind, Kurama roared with laughter. Zoe nodded approvingly. An apt nickname. I'll be sure to use it the next time I see him. No. Naruto coughed lightly. That is to say, no. You do not want to know what he will do. Punish me. Zoe tilted her head. I'd like to see him try. He could always curse you to talk only in rhyme, Percy mused. That did happen to me once. Really? Thalia said, intrigued. What happened? I may or may not have, accidentally ruptured the Apollo cabin's plumbing. Thalia laughed. That was you? No, of course that was you. Hey, in my defense, we were having a basketball game, and things got really intense, okay? Percy scowled. I could only talk in rhyme for 3 days afterwards. He turned to Naruto. Was that what happened to you? Naruto shook his head. Worse, he said solemnly. Worse. Zoe asked concernedly. How did he punish you? He didn't punish me. He rewarded me. At their confused looks, he expanded. After he heard me call him that, he teared up before hugging me tightly, saying about how I had perfectly encapsulated all his best qualities into a single name before deciding that I needed a reward. Said reward involved retelling all of his conquests as a pervert, Naruto recounted with a haunted stare, lost in terrible memories. He talked for 36 hours straight, emitting ultra-bright light that cycled through the colors of the rainbow to keep me awake. The hunters and campers all winced collectively. Oh gods, Zoe whispered. That's... It was as if he was a walking, glowing RGB light that just wouldn't shut the Hades up. Naruto shivered as traumatic flashbacks assaulted him once more, interrupted only by the sound of... Damn it, can you shut up? It's not funny. Ha 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 ha, oh dear sage, it is. It's absolutely hilarious. Yeah, Naruto grumbled. You're damn lucky that you were asleep during that time. Actually unfair. Given that I was forced to witness your conception firsthand, I say that this is just poetic justice, Kurama sniffed as Naruto gagged automatically. Then he smirked. So, does this mean that you know all of the backstories, so to speak, of the children of Apollo? I literally just realized that I do know, oh gods, oh gods. There was a mental thud as Kurama fell down, unable to keep himself upright from how hard he was laughing. And that's why I call Apollo by his name, Naruto finished with a traumatized gaze. A heavy silence descended over them. Well, after knowing that, having a split personality is completely understandable, Thalia said. There was a muttering of agreement around the group. Naruto, can you please stay at Camp Half-Blood for a few days as I fully explain the situation to my hunters? Artemis asked. I suspect they'll need some time before they're ready to meet you. Naruto brightened. Sure. Can I stay in your cabin while I'm at camp? Artemis paused, a strange look passing over her face. Yes, you may. She responded before murmuring, that reminds me. It's nothing. We'll see you in a few days, Zoe said. Farewell, Naruto. And please, while you're at camp, take care. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I do not know if the other campers will react to you well. Let me know if they cause any trouble, and I shall see to their case personally. Thalia snorted. Chill. Trust me, after Naruto kicked your collective asses in Capture the Flag, it's going to take a lot more than being the son of Artemis for people to turn on him. Zoe looked outraged, but before she could say anything, Thalia continued. Oh, and Naruto, don't worry. I'll try to convince the hunters that you're pretty cool. She paused before adding with a smile that told Naruto she was joking, for a male, that is. Naruto smiled. Thank you, he said sincerely. He frowned slightly when he realized that Bianca was uncharacteristically silent. Hey, Bianca, you alright? I feel like we're forgetting something, Bianca muttered. Something important. Thalia tilted her head. Are we? We have all of our magic items and, nope, that's it. We have everything. Bianca frowned, her brow furrowing in thought. I guess you're right, her eyes widened. My brother. There was a moment of silence. Damn, Percy cursed. I completely forgot. I remember now, Annabeth said, eyes narrowed. Hades said that he brought Nico to the underworld, didn't he? I can't believe I forgot, Bianca said, her face stricken with guilt and worry. What kind of a sister am I? In our defense, Thalia said grimly, we were a bit more focused on other things. Naruto clapped his hands together. All right, he announced determinedly. Time to storm the underworld. Time to what now? A voice spoke up from behind him. Hey Mom, Naruto smiled cheerfully without turning around. I need to invade the underworld real quick to retrieve Nico. Be right back. Absolutely not, Artemis said dryly. You're going directly to Camp Half-Blood and staying there. Naruto's eyes flashed defiantly as he spun around, looking directly at Artemis, who had her arms crossed. I need to save Nico. From what? Artemis interrupted, raising an eyebrow. It's not as if Hades is going to torture him or anything. You heard him, he brought Nico to the underworld to protect him from my father's lightning bolts. Damn, Hades is kinda paranoid, Percy muttered. Artemis turned to him with a detached expression. No, she said coolly. He's not. Percy paused before narrowing his eyes as the implications of her statement hit him. There's no way. There is, she responded simply. Naruto could have sworn that her eyes flitted to Bianca for a moment. Logically, it makes perfect sense. Unlike Percy, Thalia, or even Bianca, Nico is a complete unknown. We know nothing of his allegiances or loyalties. And he's the son of Hades to boot. Nico would never turn on Olympus, Bianca said angrily. Artemis held up a hand placatingly. I know. However, when the fate of the world itself is at stake. While I may not necessarily agree with my father's decisions, I can understand where he's coming from. She sighed. As it stands, Nico is probably safer in the underworld right now than on Earth. She cast her gaze over to Naruto. So please, don't try to rescue him. Naruto nodded reluctantly. Understood. Bianca clenched her fists. That isn't fair. We're demigods, Percy murmured. Life rarely is. On that note, it's time to leave. The moon chariot descended from the sky and landed behind Artemis. Zoe, Thalia, Bianca, let's go. Naruto, her gaze softened. I'll see you later. With that, she entered her chariot and waited for her hunters. Thalia hugged Annabeth goodbye as Zoe gave a single nod at them before they both got into the chariot as well. Bianca, however, hesitated. I'll make sure he's safe, Percy said. I promise. Hades still owes me a favor. Bianca relaxed slightly. Thank you, she replied gratefully. I'll try to contact my father as well. She got into the chariot as well and a moment later, the moon chariot was in the night sky. The sun chariot is cooler than the moon chariot, Percy said out of nowhere. Percy. Annabeth chided. What? He replied defensively. Just saying. Naruto quirked an eyebrow in amusement. ADHD demigods with the attention span of a chipmunk. No wonder they had forgotten about Nico. Hey, where's Apollo? Naruto asked. I don't know, Percy replied. I don't think he even came to the party. Huh. Strange. Naruto shrugged. Whatever. He's probably fine. He chuckled. Knowing him, he probably didn't even make it 3 steps into the party courtyard before he went home with the first pretty girl he saw. Being the god of prophecy came with numerous perks, including some perks most people didn't know about. See, the term prophecy was rather misleading, since it implied that Apollo only had control over prophecies of the future, which wasn't the case. His domain covered a vast range of powers and abilities that only a few other beings possessed full knowledge of, with good reason. While Apollo often boasted of his music, poetry, and archery skills, rightfully so, since he was a complete beast, he almost rarely advertised his prophecy abilities. Primarily because nobody really cared, prophecy powers were nowhere as flashy as hitting a flawless 360 blindfolded scope from 100 miles away or playing every single musical instrument ever invented telepathically at the same time. As such, most demigods and even gods were unaware of the full extent of his powers. One of his more obscure powers was clairvoyance, the ability to perceive the world around him with only his mind. With clairvoyance, it was nigh impossible for Apollo to lose a game of hide-and-seek, as Naruto had found out the hard way. More importantly, he could know the contents of a conversation in another room without actually being able to hear or see anything. Due to his clairvoyance flaring up randomly, similar to his other prophecy powers, his clairvoyance would arbitrarily activate at the oddest times. Apollo knew with perfect clarity what Naruto had just said. His left eye twitched in annoyance. Going home with the first pretty girl he saw? He wished that was the case. Oh, how he wished. Because instead of going home with the first pretty girl he saw, Apollo had been accosted and practically kidnapped by 3 ancient, very not pretty but very much pissed off goddesses. Answer me, Apollo. What did you do? Oh gods, it wasn't me, I swear. Please, you have to believe me. It wasn't me. Apollo's pleas of innocence fell on deaf ears as the 3 fates advanced on him menacingly, each wielding a huge pair of scissors with long gold and silver blades that scared Apollo far more than any sword or spear could. Clotho, please, Apollo looked at the fate of birth imploringly. He winced at the withering glare he received in return. Lachesis. He tried again pleadingly, turning his gaze. The fate of life's cold, dead stare sent shivers down his immortal spine. There was no mercy in those eyes. With that, he turned over to the final fate. Atrophos? Et2. Strangely enough, she wasn't glaring at him but rather she seemed intently focused on a lower part of him, a certain appendance he took great amounts of pride in. He whimpered when the fate of death snapped her scissors shut with an audible shlink, her gaze still focused on his manhood. The message sent was painfully clear. Enough games. We'll give you one last chance, Clotho began threateningly. Tell us what you did, and we shall let you leave painfully in one piece. Apollo frowned. Don't you mean you'll let me leave unharmed in one piece? Lachesis tilted her head. Better leaving painfully in one piece than leaving painfully in pieces. She absently twirled her scissors around in her hand, her eyes glinting with an unholy light. Apollo laughed nervously. Now, he held up his hands placatingly. I'm sure we can talk about this like calm, reasonable gods. His eyes widened suddenly as he pointed behind the fates. Hey look. A distraction. Let's pay attention to it. Amazingly enough, they actually fell for it, spinning around. Probably because they had virtually no combat experience. Apollo immediately took advantage of the opportunity, wasting no time in entering his divine form and getting the Tartarus out of there. He breathed a sigh of relief. Holy Zeus, that was actually the most terrifying thing I've been through in the past few centuries. That is the worst knockoff of the Byakugan I have ever seen, Kurama remarked dryly. Naruto couldn't help but agree. In front of them stood Argus, the camp security chief who had come to pick them up and take them back to Camp Half-Blood. He would have looked like a typical athletic blonde if not for the countless eyes all over his body, on his arms, on his legs, on his face, on his neck. Naruto vaguely recalled reading about Argus once. Hera had created him with 100 eyes so he would have no blind spots and would be the perfect guard. It's like an evolved version of Danzo, Kurama muttered. Ironically enough, the gentle fist would probably be the most effective on Argus. Naruto winced at the thought. Oh gods! How did Argus even fight? It must hurt like hell every time he battled with someone. The security guard may not look like it, but he was undeniably tough as hell. And if Gaara fought him? I doubt he even needs to attack, just send a sandstorm in Argus's general direction and it'll be all over. Despite himself, Naruto snorted. Why are we taking a taxi? Percy wondered. Annabeth shrugged. No idea. Just be glad it's not the Grey Sisters, she smirked. Percy groaned. Ugh. Don't remind me. Argus stayed silent. Hey Chiron. Percy called out cheerfully. We're back. Chiron had been reclining in his wheelchair at the porch of the big house, a serene expression on his face as he gazed up at the night sky. The moment he heard Percy, however, he whipped his head around to stare at their approaching figures, looking at Percy blankly. Then he stepped forward slowly, reverting to horse form as he did so. Percy faltered slightly at the almost frightening intensity in Chiron's gaze. Chiron? Is everything all right? His puzzlement transformed into outright horror as Chiron charged at him with a wild look in his eyes. Sweet merciful Hades, please Chiron, we can talk about this. Ask anyone at Camp Half-Blood what they thought of Mr. D, and they would probably say something along the lines of, he's an asshole. Or worse. Even his own sons, while they loved him dearly, would admit that he wasn't exactly the model example of a good person. And if anyone at Camp Half-Blood saw Dionysus as he was right now, they would likely stare slack-jawed, their image of him obliterated in their minds, before questioning everything they knew about the world and their sanity itself. You know, we really ought to do this more often. Ariadne smiled beatifically at him as she snuggled in closer. Dionysus chuckled. We should, he agreed, tightening his embrace around his wife. They were cuddling in one of his gardens, enjoying each other's presence. The sweet smell of grapes permeated the air, and although the stone bench they were sitting on looked uncomfortable, it was enchanted so that it was softer than feathers. Dionysus was rarely able to spend time with his wife like this, so whenever he got the chance, he made sure to enjoy the time to the fullest. Say, later tonight, how about we? He was interrupted by a flash of golden light. Dionysus snarled in annoyance as Apollo tumbled into the garden. Get the Hades out. Apollo shook his head, disoriented. Where am I? He looked at Dionysus and Ariadne. Ariadne looked amused while Dionysus had a death glare on his face. Oh. Dude, I am so sorry. I was kinda distracted trying to shake off my tail, and I really wasn't thinking of a specific destination when I teleported. My bad. Shake off your tail? Ariadne repeated curiously. Why? Who's after you? There was the sound of an explosion off in the distance. A look of fear passed over Apollo's face. Gotta go by. He turned around but then paused as he glanced downward, his eyes glowing gold for a moment. Oh, and Dionysus. What? The wine god snapped. You may want to check up on Chiron. Another flash of light, and the sun god was gone. Dionysus sighed wearily. Now then, where were we? Ariadne's lips quirked up into a smile. Aren't you going to check up on Chiron? Dionysus snorted. Not my problem. Dionysus, she said reproachfully. He held her stare for a moment before relenting. Fine, he said with a good-natured sigh. Ariadne always did manage to bring out the best in him. He tilted his head, purple light flaring to life in his eyes. Now let's see, he muttered. Chiron, where are you? Dionysus's eyes widened. Wait, he can't possibly be, shit. Shit. He turned to his wife. Gotta go, love you, he said hurriedly as he quickly planted a kiss on her cheek. What happened? She asked in concern. He finally snapped. With those words, Dionysus dematerialized. Ariadne paused for a moment. Then his words fully sunk in. She paled. Percy stumbled back in shock as Chiron stampeded towards him, freezing as a deep primal fear filled his eyes. Getting run down by an angry centaur was fucking terrifying. Before he could react, Chiron was already right in front of him, rearing up in his full majestic glory. In a flash of purple light, Dionysus materialized behind Chiron just as he was about to trample Percy, holding him back with both of his arms and all of his strength. Wait, Chiron, wait. The wine god shouted hastily. You can't mutilate Peter Johnson just yet. A sound of pure rage escaped Chiron as he was unable to articulate coherent words. Please, Chiron. You know that I want to see Peter Johnson suffer as much as you do, if not even more, Dionysus grunted as Chiron strained against his bonds. But you can't eviscerate him just yet. Yeah. Percy agreed, then blinked in shock as he realized he just agreed with Dionysus. Just think of all the paperwork. Dionysus continued desperately. Not the reason I would have gone with, but that works too. Mountains of paperwork, Chiron. Mountains. Is that what you want? Dionysus paled when he realized his words weren't getting through to the enraged centaur, whose thrashings only seemed to double in intensity. Please, Chiron. Even if you are willing to do it, think about me. This is the son of Poseidon here. If anything happens to him, I'll be the one called in to give a verbal report. Pain. Chiron snarled. He needs pain. Chiron's normal eloquent self seemed to have vanished completely. Monosyllabic words were all he could muster. And I concur completely. Dionysus's eyes widened as he was being overpowered by the immortal centaur. Grapevines exploded out from the ground and wrapped around Chiron, further restraining him. But this isn't the way to do it. Subtlety, my old friend, subtlety. We can spike his drink or something. I'll even pull out my top-tier blackmail material. I have many objections to that. Quiet, Patrick. Dionysus shot Percy a glare before returning his attention back to Chiron. Just calm yourself down, please. I don't even understand. Percy said helplessly. I did nothing wrong. Why are you even mad at me? Percy immediately knew that was the wrong thing to say. Chiron calmed down immediately, regaining his composure in record speed. A dark look entered his eyes. You did nothing wrong? He asked dangerously. There was a moment of silence as Percy reviewed his memories to make sure he was actually in the clear. Yup. Percy answered confidently when he couldn't find any catastrophic offenses he had allegedly committed. I'm 100% innocent. Where's my van, Percy? Chiron suddenly said in a deceptively calm tone. Percy froze. Ah. Where? Eyes. My. Cronus be damned van. The temperature around them seemed to drop by 20 degrees as an ominous presence suddenly weighed down on them all. Dionysus, Percy, and Annabeth shivered, and even Naruto was slightly disconcerted. Cronus, get your ass out of my camp, Chiron said, not even missing a beat. The presence drew back in shock. Chiron snorted. Don't give me that, father. You were somehow completely outmaneuvered by a kid who hasn't even reached double digits in age yet. That time stop was an asshole move, by the way, Naruto added. Face it. You're past your prime, old man, Chiron said. It's time to retire. Naruto could practically sense Cronus's seething outrage. However, the Titan Lord was obviously unable to do anything besides observe. It was a testament to his immeasurable power that he was able to even manifest within the camp's magical borders, and it was probably only due to the invokement of his name. Now be gone. Chiron made a three-fingered claw over his heart before pushing outward while the camp's magical border flared at the same time. And then the presence was gone. Whoa, Dionysus looked admiringly at Chiron. That was legitimately the most suicidal thing I've ever seen in, well, ever. Respect. Thank you, Chiron smiled. Now that that's been taken care of. He turned back to Percy, his eyes narrowing once more. Where? Eyes. My. Van. Perseus Jackson. Percy laughed nervously as he began slowly backing away. Haha, funny thing, really. That's what I thought. You have chosen death. Now face it like a man. Wait. Percy protested as Chiron renewed his struggles to break free from Dionysus. That's not even my fault. Why are you blaming me? What about Thalia? Or Zoe? Hades, even Naruto, and Bianca. They were all there too. Oi, don't drag me into this, Naruto said from off to the side where he and Annabeth stood. Annabeth was currently observing the proceedings with great interest, her grey eyes filled with amusement, while Naruto had started outright snickering at the situation once he realized what was going on. They're all protected by deitical immunity, Chiron growled. I can't even touch them without inviting Artemis's wrath onto my ass. So guess who's going to be the lucky recipient of all of my unbridled fury? Not me. Percy tried hopefully. Chiron reared up before slamming his front hooves down into the ground. A tremor rippled through the ground as the earth underneath cracked from the sheer force. I see your point. Good. Now stay still so I can disembowel you. Dionysus, if you would please remove my restraints. Dionysus was silent for a moment as he deliberated over something. Chiron, he finally said. You'll let me do it? Chiron asked, hope and optimism shining in his eyes. Dionysus shook his head. Not that. If you don't do it, then I'll. It seemed to be taking all of Dionysus's willpower to get those words out. I'll let you have my specialty wine. Chiron's eyes widened in shock. Your specialty wine, you mean the bottle of wine that's over 2,000 years old? The bottle you had been saving to drink the moment your punishment at Camp Half-Blood was over? That bottle of wine. Yes. If you don't deliver your retribution on Parker, then I'll give you the bottle, no strings attached. Saying those words seemed to physically pain Dionysus. It's a deal, Chiron said immediately. The grapevines receded back into the ground as Dionysus tentatively stepped away from the centaur, who had a serene expression on his face once more. Please leave the wine in my office, he smiled. And thank you, Lord Dionysus, for your generosity. Dionysus choked back a sob as he dematerialized, leaving only the scent of grapes behind. Now then, Chiron turned to Naruto and Annabeth, completely ignoring Percy. Annabeth, it's wonderful to see you safe and sound. I admit, I had feared for the worst, and you have no idea how relieved I am to see you alive and well. Indeed, his eyes were oddly bright, although his voice remained steady. He cares, Naruto realized in a sudden revelation as he looked at Chiron in a new light. Despite his words, he truly cares for the campers. It's great to be back, Annabeth smiled, stepping in close and giving the centaur a big hug which he returned. Once she stepped back, Chiron looked at Naruto. The son of Artemis. He said before pausing. Wow. I had never expected to utter those words in conjunction in my lifetime. Anyway, you managed to survive your first quest, and a battle against Atlas himself, no less. Well done. Naruto grinned. Thanks. And, he continued guiltily, sorry for deceiving you and everything. For what it's worth, it left a bad taste in my mouth. No hard feelings, Chiron smiled reassuringly. Hey, by the way, where are the hunters? Naruto asked. They're gone already, Chiron responded. Artemis picked them up. They even beat their old record in how fast they packed up and left. Ah, yes, that reminds me. Now that Thalia is a hunter, you are undoubtedly the child of the prophecy, Percy. Make sure to train hard. I will, Percy said determinedly. Good. Now then, there are still a few hours left until morning. I suggest you all rest. Have a good night. With that, the conversation came to an end. They said their good nights and began walking back to their respective cabins. Oh, and Naruto. Chiron called. Naruto looked back. Yeah. Chiron suddenly looked very sheepish. I apologize for question 3 of my pop quiz. At the time, it seemed prudent to ask, but in retrospect, it was in very bad taste. Naruto laughed. No worries. Good night, Chiron. Chiron smiled. Good night, Naruto. What question? Kurama suddenly asked. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. As he walked towards the Artemis cabin, Naruto's thoughts turned over to Nico. He really hoped Nico was alright and well. In the short time he had known him, Nico had grown on him. Tomorrow, Naruto decided. Tomorrow he'll make sure that Hades wasn't mistreating Nico. Even if he had to storm the underworld himself. Now I know you're probably scared, the god of the dead said soothingly. But I promise you, I'm nowhere as terrible as I'm made out to be. Hell, I barely even interacted with demigods back in the old days. I did nothing to warrant my name being made into a curse word. Nico just continued screaming. Hades sighed. Would you kindly cease your infernal screaming? Gods, I know souls suffering through the worst pain imaginable who don't scream as loudly as you do. No, seriously, shut up. And suddenly, Nico shut up. He didn't make the conscious decision to. It simply happened. Hades told him to shut up, and so he shut up. In his stunned state, Nico blurted out the first thing that came to mind. That's so cool. Hades blinked genially. Pardon me. You have mind control? Nico exclaimed. It's not exactly mind control, per se. Subjugation of will then. Your card never mentioned any of this. Hades tilted his head. My card. In Mythomagic, Nico explained enthusiastically. Hades, the living shadow, the lord of the dead. Defense 3000, magic 5300, physical attack 4000. Full resistance to all undead. Passive, Revenge of the Shadows. If the enemy attacks first, then gain 1000 attack damage on the next attack. Ultimate ability, at one with the shadows. Sacrifice all actions during one turn to turn into a shadow to negate all physical and magical damage. He paused. Wait. What is it? Hades inquired. If you're my dad. Nico looked as if Christmas had come early. Does that mean that I have access to all those abilities as well? He asked with hope shining in his eyes. Hades scoffed. What? Of course not. Nico deflated immediately. You'll have far more than that, Hades continued. I don't know who created my card, but clearly they didn't do a good job of it. More? No way. Nico breathed. What else can I do? Hades smiled. We'll get to that later. For now, let's establish some ground rules. Rule number 1, you will have no contact with anyone besides your sister. What? You heard me. Rule number 2. No. Nico said vehemently. You can't do that. I absolutely can. Well, okay, technically you can, Nico conceded. But you shouldn't. Why not? Because I have friends. And dang, it felt good to be able to finally say that. Nico couldn't help but smile at the reminder that he had finally made friends. I have friends I want to talk to, and play Mythomagic with, and other stuff, he finished lamely, having realized that no, he didn't know what friends normally did with each other. Friends. Hades raised an eyebrow. Who? Naruto, the son of Artemis Dash. Wait, the son of who? Perseus Jackson, the son of Poseidon? Connor and Travis Stull, the sons of Hermes. Hades continued. Are they your friends? Nico nodded happily. Yup. Wrong, Hades said simply. They were your friends. Now that they know that you are my son, however, I doubt they'll want to be near you any longer. Nico frowned heavily. What do you mean? It is a burden you must bear as my son, Hades said with a tinge of regret in his dark eyes. Shunned. Ostracized. Feared. I am universally disliked, and I'm afraid the prejudice will spread to you as well. For what it's worth, I never intended this to happen. No way, Nico shook his head. They won't do that to me. Hades raised an eyebrow. Really? He asked doubtfully. Nico nodded with all the unshakable faith and conviction of a young child. Really? Hades gazed at him for a long moment before shrugging. Whatever. I tried. Don't say that I didn't warn you though. Anyway, for rule number. Hey, where's my mom? Nico suddenly asked, the thought having just occurred to him. Hades froze mid-word, his composure briefly slipping as a dark look entered his eyes that caused Nico to instinctively draw back in fear. Ah. That. She's dead. Nico flinched. You couldn't have delivered that news in a harsher way? Maybe try rubbing some salt in next time. Such a sassy child, Hades mused absently, the dark look still present in his eyes. Perhaps sometime in the fields of punishment will mellow you out a bit. Nico instantly fell silent. Defaulting to sarcasm was his natural instinct whenever he felt pain or sadness, but apparently it wasn't the smart thing to do with his dad. How did she die? He ventured. Call him morbid, but he had to know. He had to know what happened to the woman who gave birth to him, the woman who taught him Italian, the woman whose voice he can still hear sometimes in his dreams in the form of a comforting lullaby. How did she die? Hades repeated in a low voice. You want to know how she died? His face twisted in pain. Your mother, Maria D'Angelo, was one of the kindest women I've ever met. Whenever she smiled, she would brighten up the entire room. She never said a bad thing about anyone or anything. She loved both you and Bianca dearly, more than anything else in the world. Did she die protecting me and Bianca from monsters? Instantly, Nico knew that was the wrong thing to say as a suffocating aura exploded out from his father. The room shook as the earth itself resonated with Hades' fury. Monsters. Hades laughed darkly. No. No, she died when our great and esteemed king of Olympus tried to kill you and your sister, and she was caught in the crossfire. Because of course destroying an entire hotel with a lightning bolt is the most effective way in killing just 2 children. Damn the casualties, am I right? Though I confess, I'm not even surprised, he said with a bitter smile. His modus operandi does reflect himself, after all, loud, flashy, idiotic, and, in the end, completely useless because I managed to save you too. As Hades spoke, Nico's expression grew progressively blanker and blanker until it resembled a porcelain mask. It took him a moment to realize that he was clenching his fists tightly enough to draw blood. There was a faint ringing noise in his ears as a foreign emotion welled up within him. He didn't recognize it at first, but once he identified it, he welcomed it with open arms, letting it wash over his mind. Hatred. Not the dislike he had for the bullies at Westover Hall. Not the annoyance he had with the teachers. Not the irritation he had with the general student population. Pure, unadulterated hatred aimed towards the king of the gods. The inside of the Artemis cabin smelled like nature, the crisp morning air of a forest and the fresh scent of. Naruto sniffed the air. At least 18 different species of trees. Wait, no, 19. I swear. You, Yamato, and Kakashi are obsessed. And underneath the smell of nature was the distinct girl smell, the lingering fragrance of perfume and soap as well as the particular scent that Naruto associated with girls. After living in Apollo's mansion for years, being in the Artemis cabin just felt fundamentally different. Not bad, just different. Naruto shrugged. Whatever. After taking a quick shower, needless to say, the hunters had private showers in their cabin, he picked a random bed and collapsed, immediately falling asleep. Naruto, a voice murmured. Wake up. Naruto woke up immediately, sitting up and yawning. It took him a moment to register who had spoken. Morning, Mom, he grinned. Artemis smiled back. Good morning. I'm sorry for interrupting your sleep, but we need to go. Naruto frowned. What? Zeus wishes to meet with you. At those words, all traces of sleep vanished from Naruto's form as his eyes widened. Wait, what? What does he want? I do not know. Huh. Naruto shrugged. All right, let's go. With a snap of her fingers, Naruto found himself in an unfamiliar room. Well, room wasn't the correct word. Palace was more apt. Judging by the white marble pillars and gleaming quartz floor as well as the lightning bolts crackling in the air and the distinct scent of ozone, this was Zeus's personal palace. Zeus was standing in front of them, an indecipherable expression on his face. Outwardly, Naruto was calm. Inwardly, however. Yo, what's happening? Why am here? What's going on? Kurama, help. You ask me as if I know the answer. Naruto stilled when he realized that Zeus was standing directly in front of him. Curse his height, damn it. Why did Zeus have to be so tall? Zeus leaned down, scrutinizing him intently with unforgiving electric blue eyes. Static electricity sparked in the air around them, crackling and arcing through invisible points in the air. The air itself smelled fresher as the king of Olympus began radiating his divine power, a heavy, commanding aura that could only be described as powerful. Is he, all right, he's on. Naruto, killing intent, now. Kurama growled. He thinks he can assert dominance over us? Think again, puny god. You can have your dick measuring contest later. For now, can we please try our best to avoid causing an interdeity incident? Naruto, Zeus said in a low voice, nearly a murmur. The son of Artemis. Yo, Naruto said as he prepared for anything to happen. He could feel Kurama getting ready as well. Zeus gazed at him for a long moment. Then a smile spread across his face and a twinkle appeared in his eye. So, Artemis finally has a son. It's about time. He reached out and ruffled Naruto's hair, and Naruto was too shocked to stop him. You've got guts, kid. It appears that silver eyes aren't the only thing you inherited from your mother. Naruto blinked uncomprehendingly, his thoughts abruptly screeching to a halt. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Artemis doing a double take as well. Kurama summarized the situation perfectly in just 2 words. The fuck? Omake. The first Omake of this story. Not canon, obviously. Not meant to be taken seriously. Naruto whirled around in surprise as the world shifted and suddenly Kakashi was standing in front of him, exiting a crack in the world. Beyond the crack, Naruto caught sight of a kaleidoscope of colors and dimensions. The portal quickly closed up. Kakashi-sensei! Naruto exclaimed in surprise. What? How did you get here? It's good to see you too, Kakashi replied with an eye smile. And as to how I got here, well, a certain wizard helped me out. Naruto's eyes widened. A wizard? With real magic? Whoa. He paused. Why would he help you? Kakashi shrugged. To be honest, I don't even know. He just said something about interdimensional trolls having to stick together, and that he loved what I did to something called the CCG. He shook his head. That doesn't matter, however. What does matter is something that you said. Naruto tilted his head confusedly. I'm talking about Kakashi-sensei level bullshit, no. To make this work, we'll have to surpass Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi quoted. Naruto frowned. That didn't happen. It didn't, Kakashi agreed, but in another timeline, it did. I don't know what you just said. That's fine, I didn't expect you to. However, here is my response. Kakashi closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he opened them again and spoke. Surpassing me? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Bitch, please. If you think that you can somehow manage to surpass my level of bullshit, then you're high. He smiled. Let me show you how it's supposed to be done. Presenting an O in which instead of Naruto getting sent to the PJO verse, it was Kakashi. Heavens help them all. Let the annual council meeting begin. Hey, where's Kakashi? Zeus frowned. I don't know, Apollo said with a frown. His eyes glowed golden briefly before his frown deepened. I actually can't find him. At all. The gods frowned at that. Let's wait until he gets here, Athena suggested. The gods nodded. 3 hours later. Kakashi strolled into the throne room with a slight slouch, his hands in his pockets. Hello. He greeted with a 2-fingered salute. Thunder boomed overhead. You're late, Zeus growled. Kakashi smiled. Ma, sorry I'm late. I got lost on the road of life, and while on the road, a black cat crossed my path so I had to turn back around, and then I saw a grandmother crossing the road, so I had to help her out. Is that all? Zeus asked. Nope. Kakashi answered cheerfully. And then after that, I turned around again and I saw the black cat again. But it wasn't moving. On closer inspection, I realized that its metabolic processes were history. Apollo grinned. Nice. What do you mean by that? Demeter asked obliviously. Kakashi and Apollo both stared at her. Uncultured, Kakashi said, shaking his head. Indeed, Apollo agreed. And since the black cat was dead, I was able to forge on once more. And finally, I reached Olympus. Kakashi I smiled. And that's why I'm late. Zeus's eye twitched. And so, the Council of the Gods demands you to reveal what chakra is, Zeus commanded. Silence. Kakashi. Hermes spoke up in concern when the shinobi didn't respond. Still no response. Kakashi. Zeus boomed. Kakashi looked at him, a bored expression on his face. I'm sorry, did you just say something? Zeus trembled in barely suppressed rage. So you wish to know what chakra is? Kakashi swept his gaze across the throne room, the gods leaning forward in anticipation. Very well. I shall tell you. Finally, Athena muttered. The reason why you have never heard of chakra before is because Chaos himself erased all records of its existence, Kakashi said. Zeus's eyes widened as the gods shifted uncomfortably. See Chaos? What does he have to do with anything? Kakashi smirked. Everything. For you see. I am not of the Greek pantheon. Impossible, Athena replied instantly. We are the only gods in existence. It's cute how you think that, Kakashi chuckled. Indeed, currently only the Greek pantheon of gods exist in this world. But it wasn't like that eons ago. Long before the Olympians, long before even the Titans, a single god of immense power coexisted alongside the primordial gods, Tartarus, Auranos, Gaia, Chaos. However, he shrugged. They didn't get along, needless to say. And in the end, my pantheon decided to leave. Leave? Artemis asked. To where? Below Auranos is Gaia. Below Gaia is Tartarus. Below Tartarus is Chaos. Kakashi grinned. And what is below Chaos? Nothing, Athena answered. Kakashi chuckled again. Wrong. Below Chaos is the realm of the Soskhi's Worsithantrish the little fucker, my homeland. My pantheon left and didn't look back. And since then, we have had no contact with any of you. Zeus narrowed his eyes. Do you seriously expect me to believe such an outlandish tale? Kakashi's eyes flickered. Do you doubt me? Do you have a better explanation as to where chakra came from? Zeus hesitated. No, but... Then there you have it, Kakashi announced with a finality. What pantheon were you a part of? Athena inquired. Kakashi paused. You realize that you all are only known as the Greek pantheon because you guys lived in Greece and the general Mediterranean area, right? My pantheon existed before any landmasses on Gaia could even be named. I'm aware of that, but you must call yourselves something, correct? Kakashi tilted his head. Fair enough. Our pantheon's name is Danzo Sucks. It's a monotheistic pantheon, with only a single deity in it. Who? Zeus demanded. Kakashi I smiled. The Holy Log, of course. The what? Zeus said blankly. And you all must be curious as to why, 3 years ago, I crossed over into this world once more, Kakashi continued. The reason is simple. For you see, I am the Holy Log Pope. And I was sent here to spread the message in hope of the Holy Log. A silence descended upon the room. And that's what chakra is, Kakashi finished with a shit-eating grin underneath his mask. I see, Athena said uncomprehendingly. Thank you. It's time to debate on whether or not to blast him. Artemis's hands shot up. What are your opinions of trees and forests? She asked, her silver eyes focusing intently on him. They're the greatest thing in the world, Kakashi replied without missing a beat. I vouch for him, Artemis immediately said. Now hold on a minute, Ares began angrily. And so the great debate began. Centuries later, minor gods and demigods would speak of this event only in whispers, their voices filled with awe and fear. The argument had practically torn the world apart as the elements itself battled against each other. Kakashi watched the gods argue amongst themselves with great amusement. Well. Looks like they had forgotten about him. He reached into his kunai pouch, pulled out a familiar orange book, and began to read. Unsurprisingly, Athena noticed him first. "Are you reading while the council is talking?" she asked incredulously. Kakashi glanced up. "Of course." He beamed. "What could possibly be so important that you would read it in front of the Olympians?" Zeus demanded. "I had just reached the part where..." Kakashi glanced over at Percy, Bianca, Zoe, and Thalia. "Well, let's just say that it was a really good part, and I wanted to find out what's next." "What is that book?" Hermes asked. "Pure art," Kakashi answered. It's porn," Aphrodite breathed in awe. "You're reading porn during a council meeting. What? Is your domain malfunctioning?" Athena frowned at Aphrodite. "There's no way he's actually reading porn." "Nah, she's totally right," Kakashi smiled. "It's erotical literature." Silence. "Blast him," Zeus suggested. "Blast him," came the voices of agreement of everyone, even Artemis, who was looking at him disdainfully. Kakashi simply chuckled as he lifted his headband before both his eyes morphed into manga Kyushari Nons. He only kept his eye covered as a tribute to Obito. "Bring it," Kakashi smirked. "It's been a while since I've gone all out." The battle that took place that day was one straight out of a legend. "What the fuck?" Naruto said blankly. Kakashi smirked. "Exactly. It appears I still have a lot to learn." Naruto looked at Kakashi in awe. "Teach me, sensei, in the art of bullshit." "With pleasure." Chapter 14, The King of Olympus. The first time Zeus ever heard of Naruto was when Apollo had inexplicably burst into laughter. Typically, this wouldn't be anything out of ordinary. Zeus knew that Apollo randomly received some rather hilarious visions sometimes, but considering how they were in the middle of a meeting discussing Artemis's capture, it definitely brought some cause for concern. Perhaps Apollo had finally cracked under the strain of losing his sister. And, well, nothing good comes from a god going onto a rampage. Zeus would know. Fortunately, Apollo hadn't descended into madness. When asked about it by Athena, the sun god had gleefully informed them that for the first time in 56 games, the campers finally won a game of capture the flag against the hunters. Zeus initially thought that they won because of Thalia. He was wrong. Rather, Naruto, the new undetermined kid that arrived at camp the very day, had single-handedly carried the game. Taking one glance at Naruto, Zeus immediately thought that Naruto was the son of Apollo. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a cheerful and exuberant personality, the resemblance was obvious. He observed Naruto with slight interest. After all, the kid had kicked Zoe herself to the ground. His interest slowly grew as it was revealed during the subsequent camp counselor meeting that Naruto possessed a power called chakra. Zeus admitted he knew nothing of chakra, and neither did any of the other gods. It appeared that it was either a new power or a really ancient one. Zeus was intrigued. All the gods were. This quest was even more interesting than the ones Percy Jackson had gone on. The Nemean lion, the manticore, even the Spartoi. They were all taken down with ease by Naruto. Zeus was immensely reassured by that. After all, the stronger Naruto was, the higher the chance of Thalia surviving the quest. Zeus had almost lost his daughter once before. He wasn't willing to again. Not to mention the sheer amount of backlash he'd received for turning Thalia into a tree. You'd think that the other gods would have been happy that Camp Half-Blood gained another layer of magical defenses, but no. They were more focused on favoritism, and for Tartarus's sake, "Zeus, you already blasted my innocent wife and children, now let me kill yours too, damn it." Then Naruto met up with Aphrodite and it was revealed that he was the son of Artemis. It was as if the titans, giants, and primordials invaded all at once. Absolute pandemonium broke out on Olympus. Hermes was scrambling around, delivering the news to everyone as well as taking bets on who the father was, or if there even was a father. The nymphs, nature spirits, and minor gods were all in an uproar, crowding the streets of Olympus and gossiping madly about the new development. Athena's unflappable composure was gone for once, replaced by a manic look of pure desire to know more. It was no surprise to anyone that she immediately left to go down to the mortal world and interrogate Naruto. Hera was observing all the Olympians with a critical eye, trying to see how Naruto would affect her family. Zeus didn't miss Apollo's pale face at the discovery, or the worried glance he exchanged with Hestia. Apparently, those two had been holding out on him. His mind reeling at the revelation that Artemis had a son, Zeus then observed Ares and Percy Jackson's reactions. Predictably, Ares had challenged Naruto to a fight and Percy Jackson took it all in stride, not treating Naruto any differently at all. Zeus was already looking forward to seeing the hunters' reactions to Naruto being the son of Artemis, since there was no way Naruto could hide his parentage due to Aphrodite's spell other than running away. He had poured himself a glass of ice-cold nectar with a twist of lemon to fully enjoy the upcoming show, chuckling lightly when he saw Naruto trying to break the spell. It was futile. There was no possible way for him to. Zeus promptly choked on his drink, his eyes widening in shock. Somehow, someway, Naruto broke Aphrodite's spell. What the fuck? Aphrodite had absolute control over her domain, and only a select few other beings could negate her control. Naruto certainly wasn't one of them. Even Zeus couldn't break one of her spells. And that wasn't the end of it. As the quest progressed, Naruto managed to enter the Garden of the Hesperides. The very same garden lifted out of the normal space-time. By that point, Zeus doubted that Naruto was even human. Zeus had no idea what happened on Mount Othris. The strong magic of the Titan stronghold obscured his vision. Looking through Thalia's memories, however, Zeus felt the faintest flickers of apprehension. Naruto had single-handedly beat the absolute shit out of Atlas. Sure, Atlas wasn't taking him seriously, but even in his mortal form, the general was a formidable opponent. Zeus knew of gods who couldn't fight Atlas in his mortal form, and yet Naruto was doing it with ease. He showcased new abilities with his chakra. A golden cloak that surrounded him, boosting his speed, reflexes, and strength to a literal godlike level. Numerous variants of his Rasengan. The Bijudama, which even made Zeus wary. Naruto was powerful, extremely so. If he ever turned on Olympus. While Zeus didn't think Naruto could actually defeat any of the Olympians in battle, the minor gods and nymphs were a different matter. Naruto could do a lot of damage before Zeus or one of the other Olympians managed to stop him. Even worse, if Naruto attacked Kemp Half-Blood. With his speed and clones, he could probably kill every demigod in the Kemp in mere seconds before Dionysus or Chiron could stop him. Such a thing could never be allowed to happen. Zeus expressed his worries and concerns about Naruto at the council meeting. After all, they'd had a frankly disturbing amount of traitors lately. And then 5 Olympians, vouched for him. One vouch was enough to sway the council. 5 vouches were unheard of. Granted, Aphrodite's intentions may have been less than sincere, but the other gods were what truly mattered. Apollo, the god of truth and Naruto's guardian who lived with him. Artemis, a goddess known for her suspicion and lack of trust in males. Athena, the creator of risk assessment and a goddess far more intelligent and wise than himself. Hestia, Hestia. They all vouched for him without any hesitation. Zeus's mind was immediately put at ease. He was paranoid, as the king of Olympus. Paranoia was kinda in the job description, especially after that incident, but the vouches of his fellow Olympians was enough to reassure him that Naruto could be trusted. After the 5 gods vouched for him, Naruto's personal defense was all but a formality. Zeus still let him defend himself, though. Who knew, perhaps Naruto would give a particularly compelling argument that hadn't been thought of before. Instead of pleading for his life or using logical reasoning to defend himself, Naruto had instead called him Super Thunder Gramps. Even in all his millennia of being alive, that was a first. As he summoned a lightning bolt to his hand and prepared to blast Naruto just to make an example, painful but non-lethal, he couldn't help but admire Naruto's sheer guts. Here the kid was, standing before the entire council, powerful beings that could smite him with just a thought, and he called the most powerful of them all Super Thunder Gramps with a smile on his face. It reminded Zeus of another incident in which a cute little goddess immediately took advantage of his oath on the river Styx and asked for a bunch of perks and loot without any hesitation. Zeus might have been more furious at Naruto if he hadn't gotten the feeling that Naruto had been completely sincere with that nickname. He called Zeus Super Thunder Gramps not as a joke or an insult, but rather out of genuine affection. And so, he allowed Hera to calm him down. While Naruto was the child of Artemis, the sky god could definitely see Apollo's influence in Naruto's personality. Once Zeus's paranoia was assuaged, he could now focus on the important matters concerning Naruto. Specifically, the fact that he was the child of Artemis, his favorite daughter's first and only child. This was literally a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon, and considering Zeus was immortal, that was saying a lot. More importantly, Naruto was Zeus's grandson. While Zeus had plenty of grandchildren, the children of Athena, Apollo, Ares, Hermes, and Dionysus, he doesn't really consider them his grandchildren, especially since it would get really awkward if he ever banged one of them. However, Naruto was different. After all, there hasn't been a single child of Artemis in all of history. Perhaps it was the novelty of him being a son of Artemis, perhaps it was because Artemis was his favorite daughter, perhaps it was just Naruto's natural presence and personality. Or maybe it was just because Zeus knew that once Naruto dies, there will never be another child of Artemis, so he has to make this one count. Whatever the case, Zeus truly considered Naruto to be family. Unfortunately, their relationship had started on a sour note. Namely, the vote started by Zeus to blast Naruto out of existence. From a strategic point of view, it made sense. He was the king of Olympus, and Naruto was an unknown, highly dangerous threat. It would be remiss of him to not even consider the possibility that Naruto might betray them all. However, he doubted the demigod saw it that way. Heroes always did get hung up on the smallest things. On top of that, Zeus didn't exactly know how to act around Naruto. His typical stern persona was out of the question. After all, as the father of Hermes, Zeus recognized a prankster when he saw one, and Naruto gave off a positively foxy air. He felt bad for Chiron, he really did. Being his usual strict, prim, and serious self, in other words, acting like he has a 10-foot pole stuck up his ass, was practically asking Naruto to try to dislodge it with the application of explosives, paint, and sparkles. With his clones and illusions, Naruto actually had a chance of getting away with it. He certainly had enough guts, or suicidal bravery, to actually prank the king of Olympus. Worst part was, if Naruto did successfully prank Zeus, Hermes would probably take it as a challenge. Zeus did not want another prank war to be started on Olympus with him right in the middle. Zeus needed a plan. And to create a plan, he needed information. And so, it was with a heavy heart that Zeus turned away from the two gorgeous nymphs he was flirting with, got Dionysus to magically sober him up, excused himself from the party, and went to find his elder sister Hestia. She would know what to do. Hestia looked pleasantly surprised that Zeus actually wanted to get to know Naruto, that he considered him to be family. She had laughed at him, when Zeus confessed that it's been so long since he's interacted with a demigod aside from being stern and scary, he'd forgotten how to act. She then said just 3 words of advice. Just be nice. Zeus blinked at her suggestion. Just be nice. Seeing his reluctance, Hestia then offered to bake him some cookies. Zeus accepted her offer, obviously, not even monsters would turn down her cookies. Zeus's palace was large, grand, and lavish, like his cabin at Camp Half-Blood, he prioritized image over function. Deeper inside, however, there was a living room, a kitchen, and a television. They settled down on the couch, eating the baked goods and discussing everything that's happened in the last few days. Strangely enough, while they had been in the middle of discussing Percy's fight against Thalia during the Capture the Flag game, the doors had been blasted off its hinges and Hera stormed into the room, power and anger radiating off her in waves. Zeus spotted a piece of paper in her clenched fist. After looking around the room confusedly and muttering something about false alarm and stupid anonymous tips, she had left, but not before taking a few cookies. Zeus and Hestia looked at each other in bewilderment before shrugging. They talked all throughout the night, gods didn't need to sleep, and before they knew it, it was already dawn. It was showtime. Zeus sent a message to Artemis telling her to bring Naruto and meet him here. Hestia left, but not before giving him one last bit of help, which Zeus was eternally grateful for. However, he failed to hear Hestia's whispered words to herself. I put him in a good mood. Everything is up to you now, Naruto. Good luck. Artemis and Naruto appeared in a flash of silver light, both of them looking nervous, though they hid it well. Zeus stood in front of them, letting a trickle of his power leak out just for dramatic effect. He leaned down and looked Naruto in the eyes. Silver eyes the same color as the moon. Hestia's words echoed in his head as he deliberated on what to do. Just be nice. It was an inconceivable notion. He was the king of Olympus, the god that had to set an example for everyone else. Openly displaying affection wasn't his style. And yet, just be nice. The Titans were returning. If they managed to actually overthrow Olympus, then Zeus may never get a chance again. It wasn't as if he enjoyed being stern and unsmiling all the time, contrary to popular belief. Just be nice. Sure, why not? And so Zeus smiled, reaching out and ruffling Naruto's hair, an action he hadn't done in, oh gods. It's been so long, he'd already forgotten. Back when Hermes was still a child. Once, Zeus hadn't always been so strict and stern. Once, he'd been more relaxed and carefree. He missed it. Perhaps this wasn't such a bad idea after all. In both his previous and current life, Naruto had been in countless situations where things go catastrophically wrong. Whether it's Madara single-handedly massacring the entire allied shinobi forces or Apollo making a 1 HP comeback and chaining a 27-hit combo, Naruto was used to dealing with sudden clusterfucks. However, he wasn't exactly sure how to react when something goes catastrophically right for once. I don't sense any negative emotions. Kurama said flatly. None at all. He's being completely genuine here. But that makes no sense. He's not supposed to be like this. Kurama snorted. No kidding. Last I checked, Zeus was supposed to be this arrogant version of Danzo with family issues even worse than the accursed Uchiha, not this nice old man who ruffles your hair and acts all pleasant. So tell me, Naruto. How did you mess up so spectacularly in your intelligence gathering? Well, I admit, most of what I know about Zeus, I found out through Apollo and the old myths. Hold that thought. The old myths? The same unreliable, inaccurate, inconsistent old myths? Maybe? Although I suppose Apollo can be considered an accurate source, so at least you didn't completely screw that up. Naruto was silent for a moment. Naruto? Kurama said slowly. Why do I get the feeling that you're not telling me everything? Well, the only time Apollo really talked about his father was when he was complaining about him. Kurama took a deep, calming breath. So you're telling me, he began dangerously, that everything you know about Zeus, everything you told me about Zeus, came from wildly biased and inaccurate sources? I mean, the myths aren't that inaccurate, you know? Since all myths have a basis in truth, Naruto defended weakly. Holy sage, Kurama muttered. First of all, I've seen my myths. If you think me transforming into a beautiful fox girl has a basis in truth, then you're insane. Second, I suddenly understand why they never promoted you past genin. No, it's because Kakashi-sensei lost the paperwork for field promotion. Naruto grumbled. Personally, I just think he thought it would be hilarious for me to be the first genin to become Hokage. I have to say, I'm rather impressed, Zeus said, drawing Naruto's attention. You fought Atlas, no, I dare say you crushed Atlas, and you survived. There are gods who can't even do that. Excellent work, Naruto. Thank you. Naruto said hesitantly. Hold on, I'm a bit confused. Weren't you planning on blasting me just last night? Nice. Real subtle. Zeus waved his hand dismissively. That wasn't personal or anything. Just had to make sure that you wouldn't actually turn on Olympus. However, 4 vouchers from Hestia, Apollo, Athena, and Artemis, he inclined his head at her, is more than enough to convince me that you're loyal. Naruto blinked. Oh. And what about Aphrodite? Zeus snorted. You and I both know she just wanted to keep you alive so you could suffer more. Naruto winced. Right. I do hope you won't hold it against me though, the Sky God added. Please try to understand. You were an unknown, highly dangerous entity. If you ever did betray us, well, while at most you might be able to land light scratches on the Olympians. Was that a challenge? That sounded like a challenge. If you attacked Kemp Half-Blood, then things would have been bloody. I had to be absolutely certain. Father, Artemis interjected exasperatedly. I already told you before the council meeting that Naruto would never betray us. Zeus shrugged. Had to check with the council. You know how it is. Artemis sighed at that but accepted it. Naruto nodded slowly. That made a surprising amount of sense. Granted, starting a vote to blast someone because they might betray Olympus was overkill, but then again, they were gods. He still regarded Zeus with slight mistrust though. Good reason or not, Zeus had still started a vote to blast Naruto out of existence. The king of Olympus had to do a lot in order to get back into Naruto's good graces. You must be hungry, Zeus said suddenly. I have some ramen cooking in the kitchen. Breakfast. Naruto froze, his thoughts screeching to a halt in his head. Ramen? Brat. Don't you fucking dare. Naruto beamed brightly at Zeus. I knew there was a reason you were my favorite grandfather, he said happily. Let's eat. Kurama sighed. Gods damn it. This is Hestia's cooking, Naruto said in surprise after he took a single bite. Zeus blinked. You can tell from the taste alone. Naruto looked at Zeus incredulously. You can't. Zeus shrugged. I don't eat ramen often, so I can't really tell a difference. Horror filled Naruto's gaze. No wonder he's grumpy all the time. Naruto paused mid-bite, suddenly remembering something. Lord Zeus, do you have a sacrificial flame anywhere? Zeus tilted his head before waving his hand. A fire roared to life in the fireplace. Naruto grinned. Thank you. As he made his way over and scooped some ramen into the flames, Zeus spoke up. It's rare to see a demigod sacrifice portions of their meals to the gods when they're not at Kemp Half-Blood, he remarked, sounding pleased. I'm glad to see at least some demigods still hold the proper respect and reverence for the gods, even when they're not being peer-pressured into doing it. Naruto snorted. What? Nah, I'm just rubbing it in Apollo's face that his ramen ban didn't even last for a week before I broke it. Zeus blinked. Although you do raise a good point, Naruto said thoughtfully. He scooped in some more ramen. A small, barely perceptible smile spread across Zeus's lips as he received the warmth and pleasant feeling that came along with receiving a sacrifice, along with the message. You're actually pretty cool, Gramps. Then he frowned when he fully registered Naruto's words. Gramps. Zeus had only eaten a single bowl of ramen, amateur, whereas Artemis hadn't even touched any of hers. According to her, ramen was too greasy, too salty, and too lacking in nutrition. It was pure blasphemy, but she was his mother, so Naruto let it slide. Naruto finished his 15th bowl of ramen before setting it down on the pinewood table with a contented sigh. Father, I have a request to ask of you, Artemis suddenly said as the bowls shimmered and dematerialized. A request. Zeus raised his eyebrows interestedly. What is it? Artemis hesitated for a moment before saying, I wish to make Naruto one of my hunters. Zeus immediately shook his head. You know I can't allow you to do that. Father, please. Zeus remained firm. Rules are rules, Artemis. Artemis and Zeus stared at each other, an unstoppable force against an immovable object. Naruto observed them silently with a bated breath. Then Artemis brought out the big guns. You know I can never have another child, father. Her silver eyes were oddly bright, and there was a pleading note in her voice. Naruto stared at her, stunned. He's the only one I have, she whispered softly. Father, please. I have not asked anything from you in millennia. Just grant me this one request. There was a long moment of silence as a battle of wills broke out, Zeus attempting to resist Artemis's pleading gaze. Operative word being attempting. He caved. Fine, Zeus said grudgingly. Then he paused as a contemplative expression passed over his face. Wait, but isn't he a boy? Well, yes, Artemis nodded before frowning thoughtfully. If that's a problem for you, then I can make him a girl. Zeus and Naruto simultaneously blanched in horror. That won't be necessary, Zeus said hurriedly. Go ahead, make him a hunter. Naruto nodded in agreement quickly, shooting Zeus a grateful look. I'm sorry, but did she just say she can make you a girl? Is she saying what I think she is? She's not talking about your sexy no jutsu, is she? Naruto? Hey. I'm talking to you. Don't ignore me. Hey. Hey. Thank you, Father, Artemis smiled joyfully. I appreciate you granting my request. I won't forget this. The king of Olympus merely sighed when he realized that this would probably be construed by the other gods as favoritism. Heavy favoritism. Oh well. If anyone complained, he'll just say that it was a reward for Naruto's instrumental contribution to Atlas's defeat. Besides, there was also the fact that Zeus had never really mastered the art of saying no to Artemis. Lord Zeus, can I level with you for a moment? Naruto spoke up, his silver eyes uncharacteristically serious. Zeus inclined his head, furrowing his brows slightly when he realized Naruto actually called him Lord Zeus. Go ahead. Naruto hesitated for just a moment before a steely look entered his eyes. Please be a better father to Thalia, he said bluntly. An absolute silence descended over them. Zeus blinked slowly. What did you just say? Why do I even try? Kurama bemoaned. I give you my chakra, I use all my knowledge and power to keep us alive and well, then you go ahead and pull suicidal shit like this. Artemis stared at Naruto incredulously with wide eyes. A moment later, Naruto felt a presence enter his mind. Naruto, whatever you're doing, please stop. Now. Naruto ignored them both. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table while staring intently at Zeus. See, Thalia's my friend, he said. And I care about her. She's suffering, you know. While she may not outwardly show it, she suffers because you're not in her life. He thought back to how Thalia had reacted to Bianca receiving the gift and note from Hades. The expression on her face, the hurt in her eyes. The ancient laws. Don't give me that, Naruto interrupted, cutting Zeus off. The ancient laws may forbid direct interaction, but you are more than allowed to indirectly interact with her. Poseidon and even Hades sent their children gifts and encouraging messages. They're restricted by the ancient laws just like you are, but at least they try. Meanwhile, you're here doing nothing, not acknowledging her existence in any way. For Tartarus's sake, have you even spoken to her before yesterday? Zeus hesitated, and that was all the confirmation Naruto needed. Lord Zeus, you need to understand that Thalia thinks you don't care about her. Do you have any idea how much it hurts when it feels like your parent doesn't care about you? Off to the side, Artemis gave an imperceptible flinch. The sky god narrowed his eyes. Of course I care about her. I just can't show as much love as the other Olympians because I am the king of the gods. As the leader, I must set an example. If you want to set an example, that's completely fine, Naruto responded. Just don't do it at the expense of your daughter. Lightning formed in Zeus's palm. Artemis tensed up and Kurama growled in his mind. Blast me if you want, Naruto said, staring defiantly at Zeus. But it's the truth. Look, I'm not telling you to call her peanut and give her piggyback rides or anything. But at least talk to her, you know? Show that she's not wrong for risking her life to defend the gods, show that her father actually loves her, show that you care. Zeus studied him for several long moments. Naruto stared back, determination burning in his silver eyes, refusing to back down. Finally, the king of Olympus spoke. I should really blast you for this, he muttered. In fact, why am I even considering not blasting you for this? Because you know I'm right, Naruto said in an unwavering tone full of conviction and iron resolve. You may be the king of the gods, but you're also her father. You're her family. Please. For her sake. Zeus was fully prepared to blast Naruto. Not a lethal strike, of course, but painful enough that it would ensure the son of Artemis would never speak to him in such a way again. Something was stopping him, though. It took him a moment to realize what it was. He was trembling. For some inconceivable reason, the king of the gods was trembling. All his instincts were screaming at him to not attack Naruto. But why? Naruto wasn't emitting an aura of power, nor was he even glaring at Zeus. He was just sitting there calmly, completely relaxed despite the raw lightning in Zeus's hand, his silver eyes full of determination and... Wait. Since when did Naruto have cross-shaped pupils? Zeus quickly recalled what he had seen in Thalia's memories. Back on the mountain, Naruto also had cross-shaped pupils when he was in his sage mode and golden cloak. And yet, this was different. But how? There was no pigmentation around Naruto's eyes, Zeus realized. Was that important? He couldn't tell. She needs you, Lord Zeus, Naruto said quietly. She may not show it, hell, she'll probably deny it, but she does. Trust me on this. Zeus regarded Naruto for what seemed like an eternity. Then he sighed and the lightning that had been gathering in his palm dissipated. You're really lucky that I'm in a good mood right now. Fine. I'll talk to her when I have the time. Naruto brightened. Really? Really? Naruto beamed at him, and the feeling disappeared. Thank you so much. You won't regret this, I swear. Zeus tilted his head. No, I probably won't, he murmured under his breath, a contemplative look entering his eyes. Even he could tell something was wrong when Hades of all gods was considered a better father than him. But still, how had Naruto been able to make him, the king of the gods, one of the big three, unconsciously tremble? Was it possible that Naruto was actually a threat to him? No, there's no way. Naruto was the son of Artemis, and a demigod to boot. Zeus could smite him with just a thought. It was probably just spillover stress and fear caused by the rising titans and his own father affecting his mind, or something. His instincts must have been wrong. That went a lot better than I had expected, Naruto said cheerfully as they exited Zeus's palace. Artemis didn't say anything, instead grabbing him tightly by the wrist. In a flash of silver light, they were back in cabin 8. She whirled around to face Naruto. What was that? She demanded. Yes, Naruto. What the fuck was that? Naruto frowned. What do you mean? You know very well what I mean, Artemis hissed. Do you have any idea how close you were from being incinerated in front of my very eyes? He wouldn't have killed me. You don't know that. There have been wars started over less. You accused Zeus of being a bad father. Am I wrong? Naruto said challengingly. That's irrelevant. Why would you even risk angering Zeus? Because Thalia's my friend, Naruto simply said. Because while it may not matter to you or any of the other gods, it matters to me. Nobody ever deserves to feel like their parent doesn't love them. If I could lessen some of the pain in the world and make Thalia's life better, even just a little bit, then I'll do it. And besides... His gaze grew slightly set at the reality of the situation. If I don't say anything to Zeus, then who will? Artemis narrowed her eyes. And if you had been blasted in the process? I don't care if Zeus blasted me. But I care. Artemis shouted, losing her composure for once. I care, Naruto. Naruto froze. I thought you would die, Artemis whispered. I thought that Zeus would kill you, and that I would be unable to stop him. I wouldn't have actually died, Naruto reminded her. My soul isn't from this dimension, remember? There are some things worse than death, the goddess said quietly. He could have cast your mortal soul into Tartarus or into one of the 5 rivers of the underworld. Or, if you had angered him enough, he could have thrown you into chaos itself. Naruto flinched. That was actually one possible way he could be defeated in this world. He didn't know if chaos could erase him from existence, but at the same time he wasn't willing to check. Still though, he had already anticipated Zeus attacking him, and had prepared accordingly. I would have been fine, Mom. I was in 6 Paths Sage mode. And thank the sage you entered it, Kurama grumbled. I swear, if you had angered Zeus while in your base form, or even normal Sage mode, it could have turned out badly. 6 Paths Sage mode. The thing that allowed me to defeat Kaguya, Naruto clarified. Artemis nodded slowly. And what if Zeus had entered his divine form? Naruto raised an eyebrow. You really think Zeus would admit he isn't powerful enough to kill me in his mortal form? That doesn't matter. Until you finish creating your seal, please don't take any unnecessary risks like that. Thalia is immortal now. She isn't going to get any older. There was plenty of time in the future for you to confront Zeus, only with the seal keeping your soul safe. Naruto opened his mouth but then closed it a second later. You may have a point, he admitted, looking down. I'm sorry. I should have thought things over. One of these days, you'll learn to not impulsively jump into things head first. And on that day, I will rejoice. Artemis sighed, sitting down on the bed behind her. It's fine, she said, suddenly looking very tired. Just don't do it again. She paused. Is this the part where I ground you? I admit, I'm not familiar with the norms of this situation. Naruto coughed, sitting down as well on the bed across from her. Please don't. Artemis tilted her head. I don't know. It seems like a pretty good idea. At this rate, I should probably tie you up to make sure you won't do anything stupidly suicidal again, like fight Atlas or anger Zeus. I'll try to employ some more self-preservation skills next time. Naruto offered in a hopeful tone. She considered it. That's the best I'll get, I guess, she muttered. Even though I dearly wish there won't be a next time, knowing you, that clearly won't be the case. Naruto chuckled. That's fair. They sat in a companionable silence for a while, mulling over their own thoughts. I'm a bit surprised you didn't ask about Nico D'Angelo, Artemis suddenly said. Well, of course. There's no way I would have been able to convince Zeus that Nico wouldn't betray Olympus, Naruto replied. I mean, the only reason why he let Bianca live was because she proved herself on this quest, right? But Nico didn't do anything. Artemis tensed up. That's not entirely correct. Nico D'Angelo actually saved my hunters. Naruto's head whipped around to stare at her. He did what? He asked disbelievingly. Artemis nodded. Pan and Hecate incapacitated my hunters and was going to kidnap and bring them over to Mount Othryus, where they'll then be forced to hold up the sky. But the son of Hades managed to stab Hecate and release the mist illusion, saving my hunters. He did remarkably well. Wait, he managed to do what now? He stared at her incredulously. He stabbed Hecate? The goddess of the mist? How? According to Chiron, and I quote, against all odds, Nico managed to get Hecate to lower her guard and stab her through a combination of trickery, acting, and mythomagic. Artemis recalled. Naruto grinned widely. That's awesome. Indeed. He tilted his head confusedly. Wait, then why doesn't Zeus trust him? The goddess shrugged. My father believes that Nico saved the hunters not out of loyalty to Olympus but rather because he wished to get onto my good side, so I'll allow him to see his sister. Even though Nico saved my hunters, there's no guarantee that he won't turn traitor in the future. And besides, all we have is Nico's word for what happened. My hunters were all under an illusion and none of the gods could see past Hecate's mist. As such, despite what Nico did, my father still doesn't trust him. Naruto blinked. Seriously? Seriously? Naruto scowled. I don't get it. Why is he so paranoid about Nico but not about me? I mean, I'm a way bigger threat than Nico, no offense to him. What? Artemis looked confused. No, you're not. Mom. Have you, forgotten about my chakra? I know Nico's the son of the big three and all, but that has nothing to do with it. Artemis shook her head. Nico is a bigger threat to the world than you are because of the great prophecy. Not to mention how he's the son of Hades, and you know how Olympus feels about Hades. It is literally prophesied, written in fate, that a child of the big three would either save Olympus, or destroy it. Olympus to preserve or raise. I see, Naruto said with dawning realization. To Zeus, I'm just a normal demigod. A powerful demigod, but a demigod nonetheless. It wouldn't even occur to him that I might be able to defeat the Olympians in battle. But Nico is someone who has the potential to end Olympus itself. Artemis nodded. Exactly. Damn it. I can't even blame Zeus for being as paranoid as he is if the fate of the world itself is at stake. Naruto sighed miserably. This sucks. This really sucks. I don't even know what to do now, since if Nico even steps out into the mortal world and Zeus sees him, he'll just get blasted. Letting him stay in the underworld may also be a valid option. They considered it briefly before shuddering in unison. Underground. Artemis said, a look of aversion on her face. Don't like it. Naruto suppressed a shiver at the thought. They shared a nod of mutual agreement. Then you're going to have to figure out a way to change Zeus's mind, the goddess said. Preferably after you've finished creating your seal. Speaking of which, how is the progress going on that? She inquired. Naruto winced. It's, going pretty well, he said unconvincingly. Artemis raised an eyebrow. Kurama? Do you agree with Naruto's assessment? Naruto felt her presence enter his mind again, presumably so she could hear Kurama. Kurama snorted. Hell no. See, when he came up with his genius plan of sealing his soul into his body, he failed to take into account the small, unimportant fact that we don't know how to create seals. We do. Naruto protested. A vague idea does not count, Kurama snapped. At this point, we're just blindly fumbling along and hoping for the best. Hey, we already decided to reverse engineer the 8 trigrams seal and extract the parts that involve sealing the soul. We did, but that requires time and lots of experimentation. So far, we've made minimal progress. So to answer your question, goddess, things are not going pretty well, Kurama growled. Don't mind him. He's been kinda grumpy lately for no reason, Naruto confided to Artemis. No reason, Naruto, you do realize that I loathe the 8 trigrams seal, correct? Kurama narrowed his eyes. I have analyzed and obsessed over it for 16 long years in order to determine its strengths and weaknesses. Trust me, I do not enjoy having anything more to do with this accursed seal. I actually forgot about that, Naruto said guiltily. If you really hate it that much, then I suppose I can try and work on it by myself. I'd rather you not blow yourself up, Kurama said bluntly. If this new seal will save your life, then it's worth it. But don't blame me if I am a little grumpy. Do you have an estimate for how long it'll take before you finish? Artemis questioned. Probably a month. Maybe 2. Maybe 3. I don't know. Fortunately, Naruto is hyper-intuitive with seals, and I myself have a millennium's worth of knowledge, so it's not impossible. It'll just take some time. Time is something we have, fortunately, the goddess said. It'll likely be several months before the Titans make a move. So as long as Naruto could prevent himself from pissing off any more gods or Titans in that time, then we'll be good, Kurama summarized. Precisely. Anyway, I need to return to my hunters now, Artemis stood up. Can I come with? Naruto asked, standing up as well. Artemis hesitated. Give it another day or two, please. Thalia, Zoe, and Bianca are making progress, but, well, it's going slowly. But he's a male, Phoebe frowned. Holy Zeus. Thalia threw her hands up in frustration. Yes, he's a male. No, he's not arrogant or brutish or cowardly or rude or disrespectful or conceited or haughty. No, we're not under an illusion or a mind-controlling spell. Yes, he's the son of Artemis. Yes, he lived with Apollo. No, he's not going to flirt with you. We already went over this 5 times. Are you sure? Another hunter, Psyche, asked. Perhaps he dosed you with a poison that caused you to hallucinate all his good qualities. I can't. Zoe, Bianca, good luck with this. I'm done. On top of that, Artemis continued, their general dislike of males seems to have increased since the last time I saw them. Naruto frowned. What? Why? Artemis shrugged. They refused to say, although they did heavily imply it was Nico D'Angelo's fault. Much to Bianca's confusion. Naruto's frown deepened. What exactly did Nico do to them? But don't worry, the goddess asked hastily. They'll come around soon once they get over their initial shock and disbelief. You know, you could always just let me talk to them, Naruto offered. I'm pretty good at making friends. Artemis frowned. Naruto, my hunters aren't exactly the friendly sort. I doubt even you can become friends with them. Kurama began laughing hysterically in Naruto's mind at that. She thinks, he gasped, she thinks being unfriendly is enough to stop you from making friends. Artemis looked confused, but before she could ask him to elaborate, Naruto spoke. All right then, he said, shrugging, easily accepting Artemis's decision. I did want to talk to the campers and Chiron again. A mischievous glint appeared in his eyes. Besides, I still have some unfinished business with the Stahl twins. Artemis took one look at his devious grin and gave a mental shudder, silently sending an apology to Chiron. Just don't do any permanent damage to the camp, please, she requested. You will not believe how passive-aggressive the centaur can get. When the camp burned down last time, well, let's just say I did not have a fun few months. Naruto snickered. You know, Chiron actually snapped last night. He really needs a vacation. That I agree with. But the thing is. Artemis's gaze softened as respect flickered in her eyes. He cares too much about the campers to take a break. After all, every minute he spends sunbathing in Hawaii is a minute he could be using to train a demigod to ensure that they won't die. He might complain about paperwork and the stupidity of heroes, but in the end, all that truly matters to the teacher of heroes is his students returning to him alive and well. Naruto was silent for a moment. You say that as if you know him very well, he noted. Artemis chuckled. It's a well-known fact that Chiron is the teacher of heroes. But have you ever wondered who had taught him? Naruto's eyes widened in revelation. Wait, you were Chiron's teacher. My brother and I were, she confirmed, amusement in her gaze. Apollo and I taught him everything he knows about combat, mostly archery, with some swordsmanship, hunting, and medicine. We still remain in correspondence with him. Wow. Naruto blinked. Artemis nodded. Indeed. She began to glow a bright silver light. One more thing, he called, his brow furrowing in thought. She paused, waiting for him to speak. Why didn't you just tell Zeus that I don't possess a single drop of mortal blood, and therefore the ancient laws don't apply to me? Artemis's lips quirked up into an amused smile. To tell you the truth, I just wanted to see if I could still manage to persuade my father. And, well. Her smile widened. It looks like I've still got it. Naruto laughed. Naruto, there you are. Naruto turned around to see Annabeth running up to him. Hey Annabeth, he greeted with a smile. What's up? There's a post-quest counselor meeting. We've been looking for you, she told him. Come on, let's go. Have you had breakfast yet? He nodded. Yup, he said as he followed after her. They sprinted across Camp Half-Blood. I never really had a chance to introduce myself, Annabeth said. I'm Annabeth Chase, the daughter of Athena. It's nice to meet you. Naruto, the son of Artemis, Naruto returned. It's nice to meet you too. Hey, are you okay? Annabeth frowned. What do you mean? You know, the quest. They didn't hurt me while I was kidnapped. I wasn't talking about that. It took Annabeth a moment to understand, but when she did, her expression immediately became guarded. I'm fine, she said shortly. Naruto was silent for a moment. For what it's worth, he finally said, so quiet that she could barely hear him over the rushing wind, I'm sorry Luke died. Despite what the gods and other demigods may have thought, I really hoped that we would be able to capture him alive. I'm sorry. She didn't reply. Even though they were sprinting just a few feet next to each other, it felt like there was a chasm a mile long between them. We're here, Annabeth announced. They stopped in front of the big house, neither of them out of breath. She quickly went inside, not bothering to wait for him. You definitely have a way with girls, Kurama commented amusedly. Yeah, well, I know how it feels when everyone wants a traitor dead except for you. I won't pretend to know how she feels right now, but I know that if Sasuke had died and everyone was rejoicing, I would be absolutely miserable. You do realize that I would have been one of the ones celebrating the Uchiha's death, right? So you've told me. Naruto, you're here, Chiron greeted warmly as Naruto stepped inside the room. Everyone else was already there, sitting around the ping-pong table. You're also late. Naruto blinked and automatically said the first thing that came to his mind. Sorry I'm late, I got lost on the road of life. There was a moment of silence as they absorbed his words. Chiron must have decided it wasn't worth the effort, because he continued talking, completely ignoring Naruto's excuse. Anyway, I presume Lord Apollo already took care of the post-quest debriefing. Yes, Percy instantly replied. Good. I'll have Lord Apollo send me a copy of the debriefing later, but for now, we can discuss the important things. What important things? A new girl spoke up. Dark eyes, stringy brown hair, a scar on her chin. She looked like Ares. His daughter, probably. Important things like Pan. Grover cried out. Pan betrayed us. He then broke down into tears, Percy awkwardly patting his back. All this time, we satyrs never gave up on him, he sobbed. We looked for him, never giving up no matter what. And then it turns out that he was alive all along, and he's a traitor to Olympus. Yes, that was indeed an unpleasant surprise, Chiron said, looking at the young satyr sadly. With Pan joining the Titans, many nymphs, nature spirits, and satyrs may join as well. Especially if the Titans promise to thin down the population of mortals so they wouldn't further damage the environment. I'll never betray Olympus, and neither will any of the satyrs I know, Grover bleated in outrage, looking offended that Chiron would even suggest a thing. Chiron held up a calming hand. I know, but not everyone is as loyal as you. He sighed, looking around the room. This is catastrophic, by the way, for those of you who are unaware. A satyr's nose is unparalleled, allowing them to easily sniff out demigods. If the satyrs join the Titans, even just some of them, then they'll be able to find more demigods and recruit them to the Titan army. We need incentives for the satyrs to stay on our side then, Annabeth said with an analytical gaze. But what? Aluminum cans? Free enchiladas? Grover shook his head. There's nothing Camp Half-Blood can offer. You don't understand. Pan is like a father to us. Even though I know he's wrong for betraying Olympus, it's still taking all of my willpower to not join him. And it is a testament to the strength of your resolve that you are still with us, Chiron said. I'm proud of you, Mr. Underwood. Thank you, the satyr said, sounding absolutely miserable. Anyway, moving on to other things, Chiron steepled his fingers, looking grim. In the past few days, I've been made aware of two critical security errors. Namely, the fact that Pan and Hecate were able to infiltrate the camp. Typically, the borders only keep out monsters, but now, I'll have to restrict everyone from entering except for demigods and the Olympians. And what's the second error? Percy questioned. Chiron's face darkened. There is a high probability that there is a passage into Camp Half-Blood, one that the magical borders have no control over, thus allowing anything to enter. Every camp counselor bolted upright except for the daughter of Ares. What? Annabeth demanded. Where? What passage? The labyrinth, Chiron answered grimly. The creation of the genius inventor Daedalus. Unfortunately, I do not know if this passage even exists, much less where to look for it. It could be in the forest, it could be in the cabin area, it could even be here, in the big house. I sent Clarice onto a mission to explore it, but, well, it wasn't a success. Naruto blinked. Oh. Chiron. Everyone turned to him. What is it? Chiron asked. Naruto scratched the back of his head. I, may know where it is. You do? Chiron said in surprise. How? Nico and I found it when we were exploring the forest, Naruto explained. It's at the big cluster of boulders. Zeus's fist. Yeah, that. I see. You'll have to show us later. However, if it is truly there, then you'll have lifted a huge weight off my back, prevented many sleepless nights, and saved me from filling out mountains of paperwork. Chiron shot Naruto a grateful smile. Thank you. Oh, and that reminds me. Congratulations, Naruto. You're now the head counselor of Cabin 8. Are you really the son of Artemis? The new girl asked. I'm Clarice, by the way, head counselor of the Ares cabin. I am, Naruto nodded. Before anyone asks, I was born through essence combination. You really pissed off my mom, Silena, the head counselor of the Aphrodite cabin, commented, eyeing Naruto with an indecipherable gaze. Ah. Naruto paused. Is this the part where the Aphrodite cabin declares war on the Artemis cabin? Silena snorted. We've been at war with the hunters for millennia. You're just the newest addition. She paused. But for what it's worth, I don't really have anything against you personally. It's just that my mom really wants us to make your life hell. Naruto chuckled. Fair enough. I'll be gone in a few days though, so you don't have to worry too much. Lord Zeus allowed you to travel with Lady Artemis and her hunters? Chiron asked in surprise. Not exactly. At Chiron's questioning look, Naruto elaborated. He gave Artemis permission to make me a hunter. Every demigod in the room suddenly refused to meet Naruto's eyes. That's kind of unfair, Connor muttered. Let me get this straight, Clarice said, looking at Chiron angrily. We're here, lucky if we even get to speak to our parents once a year, and Naruto is going to be gollivanting around with the hunters and Lady Artemis for the rest of his immortal life. Wow. For once, people are jealous of you. I genuinely don't know how to react. Oh, would you all stop angsting already? Dionysus spoke up in a bored voice. If it makes you all feel any better, I highly doubt Naruto even is immortal, so the ancient laws don't apply to him. What? Percy whirled on Naruto. Are you immortal? Naruto hesitated for just a moment before answering, no. Although Apollo isn't exactly sure what I am. I'm half god, half something. Percy blinked, at a loss for words. Annabeth was scrutinizing him with a calculating gaze that reminded Naruto of her mother, as if she was trying to pierce into his soul itself. The rest of the head counselors, however, didn't look fazed at all. For a moment, Naruto was a bit confused by their lack of reactions, but everything became clear as his gaze landed on Grover, who was sadly munching on an aluminum can, not paying any attention to them at all. The demigods at this camp were used to non-mortals. Hades, Chiron himself was a centaur. There you have it, Dionysus yawned. Not a mortal, so the ancient laws don't apply to him. Feel better now. You know, that actually does make me feel better, Clarice said thoughtfully. Thanks, Mr. D. Instead of giving me your gratitude, please just end this useless meeting. Chiron coughed. Very well. We've finished discussing everything. This meeting is now over. You're all free to leave. Naruto, Connor said, smiling as he slung an arm around Naruto's shoulders. Do you still remember our conversation before you left for the quest? A devious grin spread across Naruto's face. Of course. I believe my exact words were Kemp Half-Blood will never forget our names. Identical grins spread on the Stahl brothers' faces. Brilliant, they chorused. Shall we start? Naruto suggested. Way ahead of you, Travis said. I already gathered the supplies, and Connor already made the plans. Now, we just need you to execute them. Naruto smiled. Fill me in. All right. First things first. It had been an interesting day at Camp Half-Blood, Chiron reflected. Interesting. There hadn't been as much chaos at Camp Half-Blood since it burned down. The normal, everyday activities were interspersed with pure mayhem. There had been several loud explosions in the camp's forges. This had understandably freaked out the Hephaestus campers. They promptly evacuated the forges, practically stampeding out, and had built a full-scale hazmat robot to clear out the building. Needless to say, they were not amused when they discovered that all the explosions had been caused by some harmless firecrackers. All the Ares cabin's weapons were somehow replaced by styrofoam replicas. They hadn't even noticed the difference until they began sparring, and one of them didn't immediately die when his sword bent as he blocked and the opponent's sword pierced his heart. Of course, it wouldn't have been so bad if the stabbed individual hadn't loudly confessed that he actually loved all his siblings and that he would miss them dearly before he realized he was still alive. Chiron doubted he would ever recover from that. The Aphrodite cabin was met with an unpleasant surprise when they were ambushed by paint bombs that ruined their hair, their clothes, and their makeup. A preemptive attack, Naruto had whispered to the Stahl brothers. Although Chiron did have to admit that the Aphrodite campers screaming and racing for the showers was objectively hilarious. Strangely enough, the Athena and Poseidon cabins were left untouched, though that was probably because 1. Annabeth had been kidnapped and deserved arrest, and 2. Percy had just gone on to a quest and deserved arrest. The same didn't apply to Clarice, though. A pound of glitter had been tossed onto her, and she positively sparkled wherever she walked. Connor and Travis had begun calling her princess whenever they saw her, whereas Naruto had called her a vampire. Chiron wasn't sure which one pissed her off more, being called a princess, who are notorious for needing saving, or being called a vampire from Twilight. Probably the latter, judging by how she had tried to strangle Naruto. Though it was news to Chiron that Clarice had even read Twilight. Needless to say, once Travis, Connor, and Naruto realized it too, they'll never let her live it down. Worst part was, Chiron couldn't even prove it was them because Connor, Travis, and Naruto had remained by his side the whole day. After Naruto had shown him the entrance to the labyrinth, the other two had joined him and they accompanied Chiron as he went about his day-to-day duties. And they hadn't stopped smiling the entire time. The entire day they were just giving him knowing grins, even as explosions and screams sounded in the background, and Chiron couldn't do anything about it. Of course, once he tricked Percy into giving him a written testimony that Naruto could create solid clones, Chiron was free to bust the son of Artemis's ass. But Naruto had already left the camp with Dionysus's permission, presumably to join the hunters, so Chiron couldn't even punish him. This angered him immensely. And so here he was, in the big house, fuming over the events of the day. Percy suddenly rushed into the room, looking panicked. Naruto's gone to the underworld to find Nico. He shouted. We need to go stop him. Chiron scoffed. Oh please. I'm not stupid. I know he already left. There's no need to rub it in any further. I'm serious. Tell me, Mr. Jackson. How much did he pay you to tell me that frankly ridiculous lie? Because I assure you, if you continue attempting to deceive me like that, then it will not have been worth it. Now, do you have anything more to say? Percy threw up his hands. You know what, fine. I tried. I'm going to go send an iris message to Thalia. You do that, Chiron said absently. It wasn't until an hour after Percy had left and Chiron had calmed down somewhat that the centaur realized that maybe, just maybe, Percy hadn't been joking. But that was impossible. There was no way Naruto actually went to the underworld. Right? Chiron paused as he recalled one of his fundamental principles regarding heroes: never, ever, underestimate their level of stupidity because they can and will surprise you. The ancient teacher of heroes took a deep, calming breath, trying to maintain his composure. At that exact moment, the memory of Naruto's smug, knowing grin popped up in his mind. Dionysus glanced up from a psychology magazine when he heard a litany of Greek curses sound out from a few rooms over. The voice was distinctly Chiron's. His eyebrows rose as the curses steadily grew more and more creative. He was impressed. His lips curled in amusement. Granting Naruto permission to leave Camp Half-Blood had been well worth, it seemed. Dionysus now had a whole paragraph of new material to test out. And besides, at Camp Half-Blood, there was only so much the god of wine could do without getting bored. If his entertainment came at the expense of Chiron's sanity, then so be it. Then he resumed reading the magazine, slowly getting absorbed into the passage where it detailed how to survive your co-worker's inevitable mental boom. It was some really fascinating stuff. After only a moment's hesitation, Dionysus conjured up a dark purple magical shield that blocked any entry from the door. And the walls. And the windows. Just in case. Can I borrow one of your love arrows? For what? Oh, you know. Gotta make these two people fall in love with each other. Eros blinked. I don't get it, mother. You can literally just wave your hand and they'll fall in love with each other. Why do you need my arrow? Why? For the delicious irony, of course. After all, she is a huntress and he is the son of a huntress, and yet both of them will be hunted by me. Aphrodite smiled. It was a beautiful smile. Oh, this will be so entertaining to watch. The ultimate forbidden love. It was only a pity that Artemis was completely immune to all her spells due to being the goddess of maidenhood. Now that would have been a perfect tragedy. Eros shrugged at her cryptic words. All right, whatever. When are you going to use the arrow? Does it matter? Kinda, yeah. I mean, for the optimal divine strength of the spell, I need to know the approximate time when it'll be used. Aphrodite hummed. Yesterday was the 21st, the winter's solstice. You know what, I'll use the arrow on Christmas, 3 days from now. She smiled sweetly. It'll be my Christmas present to the two of them. That's it for part 7. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.